Yo, hip-hop world, hold on to your seats because what just went down has fans shaking, crying, and straight up questioning everything they thought they knew about the streets of Jacksonville. In a twist nobody saw coming, Yungeen Ace, the man, who gave us anthems of pain and loyalty, has just been sentenced for the shocking murder of rival rapper Foolio. Yes, you heard that right. Courtroom whispers turned into viral headlines overnight, and now the internet is in full meltdown mode. This ain't just rap beef anymore, this is betrayal, heartbreak, and a story that's tearing apart families, fan bases, and entire neighborhoods. Eyewitnesses claim Ace walked into court with his head high, but his eyes told a different story. A storm of regret, rage, and maybe relief. Meanwhile, Foolio's crew was posted outside the courthouse, screaming for justice, while Ace's supporters clashed with them in a scene straight out of a movie. People are asking, was this revenge? Was it a setup? Or is Ace just another rapper caught in a system that's been gunning for him since day one? Stick around, because what I'm about to tell you is messier, wilder, and more twisted than anything you've ever seen in rap history. The air outside the Duval County Courthouse was thick with tension. A line of black SUVs had just pulled up, and out stepped Yungeen Ace, flanked by two suited lawyers and his older brother, who kept his hand firmly on Ace's shoulder. Cameras flashed, fans screamed, and you could hear the chant of his name from one side of the crowd, while the other side roared Foolio's name back in defiance. The police had set up barricades, but that didn't stop the insults from flying over them. Ace walked slow, head slightly tilted down, his hoodie shadowing most of his face. His lips were pressed tight, like he was holding back a storm of words he wanted to unleash. Behind him, his mother tried to keep her composure, but her eyes were red, and every step she took seemed heavier than the last. Inside the courthouse, it felt like everyone was holding their breath. Reporters filled the back rows, their fingers already poised over keyboards. Foolio's family sat on the left, dressed in black, their eyes locked on Ace with a mix of grief and fury. Ace's supporters sat on the right, whispering among themselves, some shaking their heads as if they still couldn't believe this was happening. The prosecutor stood, painting a picture so vivid that you could almost see it play out in your head. He described the night of Foolio's death as if it were a scene from a tragic film. The rain coming down in sheets, the screech of tires, the sudden eruption of gunfire that shattered the peace of a quiet Jacksonville block. This was not an accident, the prosecutor said, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. This was calculated. It was personal. And the evidence will show that Yungeen Ace had every reason and every opportunity to carry it out. Ace shifted in his seat but didn't break his gaze from the judge. The defense attorney leaned in, whispering something in his ear, and Ace gave the faintest nod. In the front row, a woman suddenly stood up. It was Foolio's cousin, her voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You took him from us, Ace! You took him!" Security quickly guided her out, but the damage was done. The courtroom was buzzing, and the judge had to call for order twice before things calmed down. Then came the first big twist of the day. The prosecution called their first witness, a man who was supposedly a friend of Ace's from back in the day. His name was Darius, but everyone in the streets knew him as D-Lo. He walked in wearing a wrinkled button-up and kept glancing at the floor, avoiding Ace's eyes entirely. "Mr. D-Lo," the prosecutor began, "were you present on the night of June 14th, the night Julio Foolio was killed?" D-Lo hesitated, then said, "Yeah, I was there." You could feel the ripple go through the room. He went on to claim that Ace had been furious after a diss track Foolio had dropped just weeks before. According to him, Ace had told the crew, "It's time to end this, once and for all." The defense immediately jumped in, grilling D-Lo about his own criminal charges and whether he had been offered a lighter sentence in exchange for his testimony. He stumbled over his words, sweat dripping down his forehead, but the seed had been planted in the minds of everyone listening. Outside the courthouse during recess, fans clashed in the parking lot. One of Foolio's boys confronted an Ace supporter, yelling, "You think he's a saint? You blind, bro!" It nearly turned into a brawl before police stepped in. Back inside, the next wave of drama hit when surveillance footage was played. It showed a black SUV, identical to the one Ace was known to drive, pulling into Foolio's neighborhood just minutes before the shots rang out. The video wasn't. Crystal clear, but the shape, the rims, the distinctive sticker on the back window, it all seemed to point in one direction. Ace's mother put her hands over her mouth, whispering a prayer. His brother leaned forward, eyes narrowed, clearly fighting the urge to speak out. Ace himself didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. The defense countered, arguing that there were dozens of similar vehicles in the city and that no clear image of Ace was visible. They hinted that someone else could have been driving his car that night, planting the idea that this could all be part of a bigger setup. As the day went on, emotions boiled over. During a break, Foolio's younger brother approached Ace's side of the courtroom. "You gonna look me in my eyes and tell me you didn't do it?" he demanded. Ace stared back, silent, until his lawyer stepped between them and told him to sit down. But the real gut punch came when the prosecution revealed text messages, allegedly, from Ace to an unnamed contact saying he ain't gonna be a problem no more after tonight. Gasps filled the room. The defense claimed the messages were taken out of context, saying they could have been about a show cancellation or even a personal dispute unrelated to Foolio. But the timing was damning. The day ended with the judge announcing that testimony would continue tomorrow, but everyone in the room knew the damage was already done. Whispers swirled about who else might be called to the stand and whether Ace himself would take the risk of testifying. Outside, the crowd had grown larger, with both sides yelling over each other, their words mixing into an ugly storm of loyalty and hate. As Ace was escorted to the waiting SUV, he glanced back at the courthouse steps where Foolio's family stood. His eyes lingered for a moment, and something passed between them. Anger, regret, maybe both. His mother followed close behind, muttering, "We're gonna fight this. We're gonna fight this." But in the shadows of the crowd, someone was watching, someone who claimed to know what really happened that night. And they weren't ready to stay silent much longer. The figure lurking at the edge of the courthouse crowd that day wasn't just any random face. It was Malik, a name that hadn't been spoken much in recent months but used to echo through Jacksonville's streets. Malik had once been in the same circles as both Ace and Foolio, moving between crews like a ghost, collecting stories and secrets nobody else dared to say out loud. His hood was pulled low, but his eyes followed every move Ace made, every interaction, like he was piecing together a puzzle that only he understood. Inside a dimly lit diner across the street, Malik sat down with a local blogger who was known for dropping underground info before it hit the headlines. The blogger hit record and leaned in. "You saying you know what really went down that night?" the blogger asked. Malik's voice was low, almost a whisper. "I'm saying everybody pointing fingers at Ace, but they don't know the half of it. Foolio had beef with more than just him, and there's people in this city that wanted Foolio gone way more than Ace ever did. Back in the courthouse, the second day of testimony began with an unexpected witness, an older man named Leonard, who claimed to have been working security at a gas station 2 blocks from the crime scene on the night of June 14th. Leonard told the court he saw 2 cars racing down the street just minutes before he heard gunshots. One of them, Leonard said, looked like the SUV they keep talking about. But the other car, man, nobody talking about that one. Dark blue sedan, tinted windows. I ain't never seen it around there before. This single statement sent murmurs rippling through both sides of the courtroom. The defense latched onto it instantly, suggesting that maybe there was another player in the mix, someone who had slipped through the cracks while all eyes were on Ace. The prosecution, however, quickly tried to downplay Leonard's account, calling it unreliable nighttime observation. Outside the courthouse, the streets were heating up. Local radio stations were running call-in shows where fans and residents argued over whether Ace was guilty or being set up. "Look," one caller said, "I'm from the West Side. I seen what beef does to people. This ain't about music. It's about survival." Foolio wasn't no angel either. Another caller shouted back, "Man, stop making excuses. If Ace did it, he gotta pay, just like anybody else." The trial took another wild turn when the prosecution dropped what they called the smoking gun, a street camera clip from a different angle, showing the black SUV turning off the main road and heading toward Foolio's block at 11:42 p.m. The camera's timestamp matched the window of the murder almost perfectly. Ace's lawyer jumped up. "This footage proves nothing. We don't see my client, we don't even see who's inside the vehicle. There's no proof he was driving that night." But then the prosecutor smirked and said, "True. But we do have something else." He clicked a remote. And another image popped up on the screen. A blurry still from a convenience store camera showing a man in a black hoodie filling up gas earlier that evening, standing beside what appeared to be the same SUV. The outline of the man's face, though grainy, had a resemblance to Ace that was hard to ignore. The defense pushed back hard, pointing out the lack of clarity in the image. Still, you could feel the atmosphere shift, like the tide was turning against Ace. Meanwhile, in a private corner of the courthouse lobby during lunch break, Ace's mother confronted D'Lo, the friend who had testified against him. "Why you lying on my son?" she demanded, tears streaking her face. "You know he didn't do this." "You know who really did?" D'Lo avoided her gaze, mumbling something about just telling the truth before slipping away into the crowd. But his shaky hands told a different story, one of fear, guilt, and maybe even a secret he wasn't ready to face. Later that afternoon, Malik decided to make his move. Slipping through the back hallways of the courthouse, he found Ace's lawyer near the restrooms and said quietly, "You looking in the wrong direction. If you want to save your client, ask about the blue sedan. Ask about the guy they call Trayvon." Before the lawyer could ask questions, Malik was gone. That name, Trayvon, was about to become a firestorm. Word leaked to the media within hours, and suddenly everyone wanted to know who Trayvon was and why he had never been mentioned before. Social media exploded with old photos showing Trayvon hanging out with Foolio months before the murder, and others showing him in the same club as Ace just a week before the shooting. By day 3 of the trial, Trayvon's name was on every tongue. The defense demanded the prosecution hand over any files related to him, but the prosecutor argued Trayvon was irrelevant to the case. That only fueled more conspiracy theories. Foolio's sister broke her silence in a teary interview outside the courthouse. "I don't care who else y'all try to blame. Ace was the one who wanted my brother gone. I felt it in the way he looked at him. I saw the hate." Inside the courtroom, Ace sat stone-faced, but his leg bounced under the table. He glanced once at his mother, who mouthed, "Stay strong," but her own hands trembled. The judge called for order multiple times as tensions reached a boiling point. At one point, someone in the back shouted, "This is all politics! They just want to take another rapper down!" Security removed him immediately, but the outburst mirrored what many were whispering outside. Then came the moment nobody expected. Malik himself was called to the stand. The defense had subpoenaed him after learning he had been near the scene on the night of the murder. Malik took a long pause before speaking. "I ain't here to protect nobody," he began. "But I'm telling you right now, Ace didn't pull that trigger. The person who did is still walking around acting like they innocent. And yeah, I know who it is." The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed the gavel, demanding silence. The prosecutor leaned forward, eyes narrow. "And who would that be, Mr. Malik?" Malik glanced toward the public seating area, his gaze locking onto a man in a gray hoodie sitting quietly in the corner. "You," Malik said, his voice low but deadly clear. Gasps filled the room as every head turned toward the man in the hoodie. He stood slowly, face blank and without a word. He walked out of the courtroom as 2 officers scrambled after him. Ace's eyes widened for the first time all trial, but whether it was shock, relief, or something else entirely, it was impossible to tell. The judge called a recess, but the tension in that room wasn't going anywhere. Everyone knew the case had just taken a turn nobody could have predicted, and whatever was about to happen next could blow the whole thing wide open. The hallway outside the courtroom turned into chaos as officers chased down the man in the gray hoodie. Cameras swung toward the scene, reporters sprinted to get closer, and whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. Some people were saying his name was Marcus. Others swore it was Trayvon. The truth was, nobody knew for sure yet, and that made it even more electrifying. Back inside, Ace sat at the defense table, hands clasped together so tight his knuckles turned white. His lawyer leaned in, whispering, "This could be the break we needed, but we have to be careful. If this backfires, they'll call it a distraction." Ace nodded slightly, eyes still locked on the courtroom doors where the gray hoodie man had just disappeared. In the lobby, the chase ended when 2 officers cornered him near the elevators. "You're not under arrest," one of them said, "but we need you to answer some questions." The man gave a slow smirk, like he'd been expecting this moment. When court resumed, the judge announced that the man in question would be brought in for questioning the next day. The prosecutor looked visibly irritated, as if this twist had just thrown their entire strategy off balance. Meanwhile, Malik was still on the stand, and the defense pressed him to explain how he knew the gray hoodie man was involved. Malik leaned into the microphone, his voice steady but his eyes scanning the room. "I was there. Not right at the scene, but close enough. I saw that man get out of the blue sedan, the one y'all pretending doesn't exist. And he wasn't alone. There was another person in the driver's seat. Someone who knows both Ace and Foolio." Gasps and murmurs rose again, and Ace's mother put her hand over her chest, whispering something under her breath. The prosecutor jumped in quickly. "Mr. Malik, are you aware that making false accusations in this court could result in criminal charges?" Malik didn't flinch. "I'm aware. I'm also aware that y'all been building this whole case on half a story." Outside, the streets around the courthouse were becoming a spectacle. Vendors had started selling t-shirts with Ace's face on them, alongside shirts reading "Justice for Foolio." News vans parked in every available spot, and influencers were live streaming to tens of thousands of viewers, narrating every rumor and unconfirmed update they could get their hands on. That night, Ace's older brother Jamal met with Malik in a parking garage downtown. "You better be telling the truth, man," Jamal said, his voice low but shaking. "My brother's life is on the line." Malik looked him dead in the eye. "Truth ain't the problem. Problem is, people in this city don't want the real truth to come out." The next morning, the man in the gray hoodie, confirmed to be Trayvon, finally took the stand. The whole courtroom seemed to lean forward as he raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth. His expression was unreadable. The defense wasted no time. "Mr. Trayvon, where were you on the night of June 14th? Trayvon paused for a long moment before saying, "Home." The defense tilted their head. "Home? And do you own or have access to a dark blue sedan?" "No," Trayvon replied, his voice flat. But Malik, still sitting in the witness section, suddenly stood and shouted, "You lying?" The judge slammed the gavel, ordering Malik to sit down or be removed. Security moved in, but the damage was done. Whispers and side conversations rippled through the room like wildfire. The defense brought up a grainy photo pulled from a street cam showing a blue sedan parked 3 blocks from Foolio's street just 20 minutes before the shooting. The car's driver was obscured, but the passenger's profile bore a resemblance to Trayvon. The prosecution objected, calling it speculative, but the judge allowed the jury to view the photo. Trayvon's jaw tightened. "That ain't me," he muttered. As the questioning continued, Trayvon stuck to his story, denying any involvement. But there was a shift in the atmosphere. The jury seemed less certain, and the fans in the gallery were buzzing with theories. Some were convinced Trayvon was the real shooter. Others believed this was just another smokescreen to protect Ace. During lunch recess, Foolio's sister confronted Ace in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "If you didn't do it, then who did? Tell me the truth," she cried. Ace stood frozen, glancing toward his lawyer before quietly saying, "I can't." His voice cracked on the last word. And for a brief moment, even she looked unsure. Later that afternoon, the defense dropped a bombshell. They revealed a text exchange between Foolio and an unknown number just hours before his death. In the messages, Foolio wrote, "If you pull up, come alone. No funny stuff." The response from the unknown number read, "Bet, 30 mins." The phone records tied that unknown number to a burner phone purchased 2 days earlier, paid for in cash by someone using a fake name. The prosecution tried to brush it off, saying burner phones were common in street circles. But the defense pointed out that the location data from the burner phone matched movements of the blue sedan that night. By the end of the day, the jury was visibly split. Some leaned back in their seats, arms crossed. Others took furious notes. The judge announced that closing arguments could be delayed due to new lines of inquiry being introduced. Outside, Trayvon slipped away from reporters, disappearing into a black pickup truck that sped off without headlights. Malik watched from the courthouse steps, his face set like stone. Jamal approached him. "So now what?" he asked. Malik lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly, and said, "Now we wait. Because if the streets start talking, this trial's gonna go in a direction nobody's ready for." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city. In the silence of Ace's holding cell that night, he stared at the ceiling, hearing the echoes of gunshots in his memory, whether they were real or imagined. Even he couldn't be sure anymore. And somewhere across town, a phone buzzed on a kitchen counter. A text popped up from an unknown number. It read, "They're getting close. We need to talk." The phone that buzzed belonged to none other than Trayvon. He stared at the message for a few seconds before locking the screen and shoving the phone into his pocket. The words lingered in his mind. They're getting close, like a warning and a threat all at once. The next morning, the courthouse felt different, heavier. The crowds were even bigger, spilling into the streets. Some people had brought speakers, blasting Ace's tracks, while others held up signs calling for justice for Foolio. It was no longer just a trial, it was a street war unfolding in real time. Inside, the judge announced that new evidence had been submitted overnight. The prosecution looked tense, the defense looked quietly confident, and Ace sat still, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The bailiff wheeled in a small cart with a single laptop on it. The defense attorney walked to the center of the courtroom and said, "Your Honor, what you're about to see is security footage from a building across the street from the crime scene. This footage has only recently come to light, and it changes everything."